stock macOS window management. If you've been vibe coding in 2026, there's a decent chance your desktop looks something like this beautiful disaster. Windows stacked on top of one another. Can't find your terminal, can't find browsers, can't find your secret stash of cookie recipes. Multiple monitors can help, but eventually you just start feeling like a bobblehead tweaker. If you're like me, you've tried Magnet, Rectangle Pro, and everything in between. But for the way we actually work in 2026, we need something better, especially when it feels like one of our most important value adds as human beings these days is our ideas and the rate at which we can dump them into the black boxes we launder them through. Not to get all philosophical with window management or anything, but I finally landed on something that works. The number of hours I've wasted just trying to organize my own screen is embarrassing. That's why I don't show my face. And if I can save one under-socialized, underslept OCD vibe coder from staring blankly into a mess of half-visible windows, questioning every choice they ever made in life before slipping into a deep, dark existential crisis, then I guess it was worth it. Let's get started. We're talking about AeroSpace, tiling window manager, also SketchyBar and JankyBorders. We'll focus on the studio display. And in fact, if you're starting out, only ever use one physical monitor. If you're unfamiliar with tiling window managers, the idea is that the windows tile themselves automatically. So we'll open up a few Ghostty windows and they automatically tile. You have virtual workspaces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all of these other random ones. So right now we're on workspace 1, F1, F2, F3, F4. It's just how I have mine set up. The F keys work well for me. And then the F1 key toggles between 1 and 2. So you don't have to even think about it. So you can imagine having like a terminal window open on workspace 1 and then some reference documentation on workspace 2. It took me a long time to actually be a fan of tiling managers, and one of the reasons was because it was always hard to call up a Finder window where I needed it. These things are awesome, but they also can get confusing if you're not intentional about how you're using them. So I would try to launch a Finder window and it would pop up in a weird spot and it would rearrange all of the other windows in a way that I didn't like. A solution that I actually really like is I assign Finder windows to workspace F13, and then that's also a toggle. So it toggles back and forth between whichever workspace that you were on previously. So we're on workspace 1, I toggle the Finder, and I just have, it's just a workspace full of Finders. Another thing like that always held me back from committing fully to a window tiling manager. I always felt like there was never a quick way to enter notes on a scratchpad. I was used to just opening up a Sublime text window and dropping random notes in there, copy pasting. Something that I found to solve that is what I did with Finder, but with an app called HeyNote. It's a development scratchpad, so toggle back and forth between the workspace that you were on previously. So say you're on workspace 2, you want to make a note really quickly. Make a note, toggle back, goes to workspace 2. Go back to workspace 1 with F1. Another issue that I always had was a CleanShot, which is a screenshot tool that if you're not using, you should, because it's amazing. I had to write a script that would get it to follow you around, because obviously with screen captures, you want to like drag them into a Slack conversation or wherever you need to. But unless you have a pseudo sticky floating script, unless you have that, the window would just like be stuck to wherever you took the screenshot, which was not ideal. So CleanShot works perfectly, follows me from workspace to workspace. Some other random things, like I've started to use Yazi, which is just a quicker way to navigate your files. So this will probably replace my Finder window at some point when I get used to it. That's option Y in my configuration. One thing you can do with AeroSpace is have apps default to certain workspaces, which is convenient. So I have Ghostty set to open automatically on workspace 1. So snapped me to workspace 1. Now I'll show you some of the cool features that allow you to manipulate windows just with your keyboard and rearrange them just how you need them. So I'll just open up a bunch of Ghostty windows. Option backslash will toggle between horizontal and vertical. And then option comma changes to an accordion view, which I like sometimes. I usually always stick with this. And then you can merge windows. It gets kind of tricky, but you just have to play with it for forever to finally understand how it works. But you can move between windows, option. So I'm using the HJKL, the Vim keys. So H is left, L is right, K is up, J is down. Once you get the hang of it, it's quick to navigate between windows. I know there's a whole bunch of different ways of working with Claude and Mux and different ways of rearranging windows, and I'm sure there are better methods than this, but this is like the best, easiest way to fire up a whole bunch of Claude windows in the same view and move them around. One of my other favorite features of my configuration is the ability to push windows between workspace 1 and 2. So we're on workspace 1 right now. I'm going to push this to workspace 2. And I'll push it back to 1. And let's say we want to move codex to workspace 1. Push it back. All right, so just to demonstrate a practical thing that I would do on a daily basis. And I know there's a billion different ways of doing this. I could search it with FZF, but so I would go to Yazi, say that I want to go to a certain directory on Claude code. In Yazi, you can just go CC, and that will copy the file path. And then I'll go back to workspace 1, paste, and that paste the full file path. So awesome. Now I'm in there. Back to Yazi. Say we want to rebuild something in the Finder. Go Shift R. Opens it up and down, left and right. Workspace 3 is usually like my reference workspace. I'll have browser windows open or something. And then I'll just have like Spotify or apps that I don't really want to see on workspace 4. A lot of these other workspaces are dedicated to certain apps. So we'll say Tinderbox, for instance, opens on K. JankyBorders is another application that adds these nice highlights around the active window. And then SketchyBar is this menu up at the top. It just indicates what workspace you're on. Something that can get confusing with a tiling manager, the way that it like throws windows in weird places. You just have to get used to moving them around. Option plus expands, option minus retracts. Hopefully you can kind of see how this is useful, especially for development when you have like 10 billion different windows open and you need to know where everything is. Every time I need to change a configuration setting in AeroSpace, I just open up Claude, ask it a question. If you're intimidated, I don't blame you. That's why I built this AeroSpace starter, which is just a watered down version of my setup. It gives you the workspace 1 and workspace 2 toggle and the keybind to push windows between the two, and then some other basic settings that make it easier to understand and get going with without the major intimidation factor. You can copy this and paste it into your Claude code and it should set it all up for you. All of this is free, of course. With my setup, you have to change one setting in the system settings. Just go to keyboard shortcuts, function keys, and then use F1 and F2, etc. as the standard function keys. That allows you the setup that I've shown you here. Hopefully you found some of that useful. I know I was curious to see how people set configurations, and it was always just kind of a mystery to me how they were actually using them on a daily basis. Hopefully this makes it more apparent.